Here
Yay.
we are. Welcome, everyone. I'm Dr. Sobyl Bunis, and I'm the founder of the Emotional Clearinghouse. Now, the Emotional Clearinghouse is an online program where I guide you to identify and to release stored emotional trauma on so many levels that might be holding you back from having the life that you dream about and the life you deserve. Okay. And for over 35 years, I've been running a holistic chiropractic family practice. And besides doing chiropractic work and nutrition, or what we call functional medicine, a huge part of my practice was doing emotional healing work, emotional clearing techniques. And I brought that to my patients as individuals. And also, it's been amazing to work with entire family systems doing emotional healing work, sometimes working with 3 or 4 generations at the same time. And because of this amazing work, I connected with my very dear friend and colleague, Beth McDonald. You can see her right there on her smiling face. And what we are here for today, Beth and I, is for another exciting conversation in the series of conversations that we have called Astrology as a Healing Guide. And today is all about the spirit of Libra. Now, Beth and I discovered years ago that if we combined her wisdom from astrology, the science of astrology, combined with her intuitive and psychic skills, and we added in my ability to clear stored emotional trauma, that collaboration was able to really empower a lot of our clients and help them really heal on the most deep and wonderful levels, and to, in some cases, start to have a life that was even beyond what they had hoped for. So it's been a pretty exciting collaboration. And because we've had this years and years of this wonderful collaboration, we decided earlier this year to bring you these conversations in a public way so that perhaps you might find some inspiration in your own healing process, and that maybe we'll show you something that will inspire you to go to a deeper level of healing for yourself using a combination of astrology and emotional clearing work. So here we are. Now, today is all about Libra. So some of you out there, I assume, were born under the sign of Libra, and that's why you're here. But many of you have family, friends, loved ones who are born under the sign of Libra, and you just would love to understand them better, have greater insight into who they are and how to relate in a healthy way to them, right? And as Beth has taught me, and I'm really getting good at understanding this, we all are being influenced by every one of the signs of the zodiac in our charts somewhere. So every one of these talks that we do, there's something for everyone. So welcome. And now I'm going to hand it over to my dear friend, Beth, and I'm going to let her introduce herself. And then what's going to happen is we're going to go back and forth, and we're going to really demonstrate for you how you take this ancient wisdom with astrology combined with her wonderful intuitive skills, and how we add emotional clearing to that, and what we're able to, what we have been doing for the last 30 years and hopefully can offer to you. So Beth McDonald, welcome. Take it away. I'm really excited. I know there's a ton of material. By the way, Beth sends me page after page after page of notes, which I pour over, and then I make little notes connecting it up to what I do. And now that's how we begin these conversations, as a true collaboration.
It's just so funny. We've been creating peak performers for almost 30 years. And part of it is we both have the same ruling planet. We're both very cerebral. We both really geek out on our end of the process here. She's a Virgo ruled by Mercury. I'm a Gemini ruled by Mercury. And so, of course, we have to do a talk. Of course, we have to do a series of talks. And welcome to those of you who are here, whether you're here for the first time or you've been following along. We're so grateful you're here. Hi, Bobby Jean. Thanks so much. And I want you to know we could talk all day, and often do, but what we're really interested in is helping, and we can help better if we know what you need help with. So periodically, we're going to remind you, if you have questions about some specific aspect of the sign of Libra or Librans in your life, please just type it in the chat box and we'll see it, and we'll bounce right off of that and hopefully give you the answers you're looking for, or at least a little more data than you had. Does that make sense? Awesome. So off we go. The first thing I always have to say with Libra is the transition from Virgo to Libra always happens at the fall equinox. So there's something extra, there's always something a little extra special about the signs that bookend a solstice or an equinox. I think there's something extra special about the Virgo Libra transition because it's historically, at least in the northern hemisphere, it's harvest time and it's connected with the Jewish high holidays. And it's a really powerful time. And there's kind of a misconception in astrology that Virgo and Libra can be more passive. But I kind of don't believe that at all. There's an enormous power here. You know, Virgo has to physically bring in the harvest and begin to assess it. And Libra is the one who decides what's fair, who gets what. And both have very important roles in the tribe. And it takes an awful lot of strength to occupy those roles in a tribe. There's profound leadership potential in both Virgo and Libra. And that's part of why we're both so passionate about working with Virgos and Libras, because these are the ones that if you can give them the slightest bit of clarity, the slightest bit of support, they can really take the ball and run with it. Especially Libra, because Libra's so powerful. Libra rules war and peace. Libra rules arguments and negotiation. Libra rules marriage and divorce. Libra, when it's out of balance, can be very extreme, but when it's in balance, it is the Buddhist middle way. It is the sweet spot, and it's the thing that keeps the wheels of the tribe on the tribe's cart so that the cart moves forward. And so there's just an awful lot of power there that's just really something. So to make matters more interesting right now, we have a Mercury retrograde that started in Libra and is now backed herself right up into Virgo. And so for those of you who are conscious of where Virgo and Libra are in your charts, you may be acutely aware that you're feeling it and certain things are happening. If you're not, don't worry about it. If you're not aware of the whole astrology piece, but you are aware that you are in some discomfort, let's talk about it because we can make you feel better.
Wonderful.
So, with that said, I'm going to start with the archetype. The archetypes, well, normally I like to start with the archetypes. Today I'm going to start with the mythology that the archetypes come from, because this one isn't weird. This one makes sense to me. A lot of the ancient myths are reflective of the culture they were born from, which is not a culture that continues to exist and that we're not familiar with. All we have is history books, you know, and you know, the occasional Aeneid and the Odyssey and that kind of thing. And so the thing that I love about the mythology of Virgo and Libra is how they are connected. It's the same heroine. In some, her name is Astraea, and in some, it's Dike. But she's the daughter of Zeus and his second wife, Themis. And and I love this part, the matriarchy, because her mother was the goddess of justice, she also followed in her mother's footsteps and tried to carry some of that morality, some of that life's work, life purpose into her own life. And so for a lot of us with a lot of Libra and a lot of Virgo, it may be overt, it may be covert, but that maternal influence is there. And a lot of things things can come up. And so always ask yourself, what was my mother committed to? What did she stand for? You know, in your times of darkness, especially if your mother's passed and she's on the other side and you don't have the benefit of picking up the phone take a minute, say a prayer, go in, and just try and remember what she stood for. Okay, so we have a question here. Oh, yeah. All right. How do I handle it when my, ooh, that didn't work.
Can
All
you read
right.
it?
I'm utterly failing at making the window thing work, so I'm going to read it. How do
Yes.
I handle it when my daughter's father gets a bit psychotic and he doesn't do things that are very friendly and causes chaos? What should I say?
And he's a
Wow.
Libra.
Yeah, he's a Libra. Now, this is the tricky part. And I'm gonna go back to the myth for a minute. At one point in this myth, the gods had given mankind all this grace. And as time went on, mankind became corrupted. They started fighting with each other, and then the fighting escalated to war, and then the war escalated to atrocities, and things got ugly. And all the gods left the earth and abandoned their creation, except Astraea. And she kept hanging in there, and she kept hanging in there, and she kept hanging in there. And she tried this, and she tried that, and she tried the other thing. And finally, she had to admit that she had to leave.
Mm.
But what I appreciate about this myth is how Libra's ruled by Venus, the god of love, and Astraea's actions are the ultimate test of love. And how we've all been and in these kinds of situations with different humans where it's like you're really litigating it and relitigating it in your head. Have I stayed too long? Should I try this and stay a little longer? And the myth of Astraea is like it goes through a lot of the different things that she tried. And so what I really appreciate about, again, Libra being one of the goddesses of the harvest that weighs the harvest out and creates justice, is that she looks at it from all the angles and she tries different things. And then when she figured out, like, okay, this is where the line is, I'm done now. I'm done. And so whenever in this kind of a situation, Libra also rules negotiating and verbally trying to sort things out. Astraea did give quite a speech at different times to the humans. And so the most important thing, and I say this every time, is get emotionally clear so you don't get triggered no matter how many crazy things the other human says. And so then you can access the wisdom of all those different lovely communication skills and techniques that you've spent so much time and money learning, because that's what women do. we study that stuff, man. And then on a good day, we can use it. On a bad day, we're triggered and we can't. And so again, if keep track of where your triggers are and where you lose it. Like I was really good up to this point, and this is where I lost it. And then you take that to Sobyl or someone like her, and she will help you with that. And you keep going until it's not a trigger anymore. And I'm here to tell you, get there from here. Yeah.
And in the meantime, the thing to recognize is when you're in conversation with someone who's difficult like that, and you're, as you say, you're going along, you're doing well, and then all of a sudden you get triggered. If you can get to that point of actually recognizing, oh, now I'm triggered, I can now feel that something maybe from my past has just gotten stirred up, and all these emotions that are present are huge and they're no longer appropriate for what the conversation is. Find a way to respectfully recuse yourself. You can say to another person, I feel a little upset right now. I'd like to take a little break from this conversation. I will come back to it later. And you can step out of a situation where you're triggered and the other person may be too, and it's difficult. If you can consciously be aware and step out of it, that's one way to handle it for the moment, break the energy, and then come back to it maybe the next day.
Yeah. And again, there's a philosophy about closing the loop where you just say straight up, it's like, wow, I'm not being who I want to be in this situation. And can I come back on Friday at 2? Or can we talk about this at our appointment next week or whatever it is? But but just know the more you work at this, the more amount of angry inappropriateness you can stand in the presence of and turn and turn. And again, there's a great book about this by a mediator colleague, awesome dude named Doug Knoll, who's the husband of another colleague, but he wrote this book called De-Escalate. And the whole point, you know, a lot of times for decades, current theory in mediation and psychology was just to brand the other person as inappropriate and walk away, you know, or appease, like Neville Chamberlain did with Hitler, with giving away Czechoslovakia and half of Europe. You know, it's like, here, I'll just give you everything you're asking for in your insanity, and then eventually you'll stop being insane. That does not happen. And so, you know, the Doug Knoll's premise is the more you can manage your own emotion, then the more you can stand in the presence of anger or inappropriate behavior and kind of calm them down. It reminds me of all those videos we see on TikTok now and places of people calming down an upset horse that's been abused, or a cat or a dog or a foster child. It's like the same principles apply. And just know, if you need resources, if you need books, if you need cheat sheets, I have lists of different things that I like, you know, in terms of positive psychology, you know, books and classes and YouTube videos. I have the same thing about communications. I'm happy to share them. It's all really powerful.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yay. So we've got the mythology now, which is wonderful.
Oh, that's the mythology. And then that leads us to the archetypes. Now, yes. This is fascinating. Libra has kind of a few, and they all have to do with different aspects of this. And so what did I end up with here? Every time I thought I found all of them, I found another one. So we have 4 that we're going to talk about.
Yes.
The first one is the lover. Of course, Libra is ruled by Venus, the goddess of love. Venus is going to be more relationally driven than others. And so this is why your Libra pals can get so upset if they're not in a relationship or the relationship isn't working. It's their reason for living. So a lot of times with Librans, they have this drive to marry, this drive to be in a relationship or to connect, but they don't have the skills or tools, especially if things went wrong in early childhood and they didn't build a strong sense of attachment or a strong, healthy bond with anything remotely resembling a parent. And so, again, your actualized and integrated Libra will be the soulmate that dreams are made of and that you've waited lifetimes for. On a bad day, it's going to feel like a hostage situation, and you may feel like a hostage negotiator.
And the other thing that I would say, in my experience in childhood, that can lead to this imbalanced Libra in relationship is that a lot of children grew up in a household where they became the peacemaker for survival because it was a dangerous situation. So they were constantly compromising and giving in and doing everything that it takes in order to keep the peace. And now as an adult, you know, they want to be in a mature, loving, balanced relationship, but they're in that pattern.
And they don't even know it.
And it's not just, oh, aren't you great in relationship? You know how to compromise. No, these are people who are continually giving it up and giving it up and giving it up and never taking care of themselves, because that's what happened in childhood. They had to survive, and they had to maybe care for other siblings who were in danger. So there was this constant peacemaking for survival pattern that now shows up in adult relationships.
Yeah, it's difficult. Libra tracks back to the different kinds of attachment theory, I think, more than a lot of signs do, because it is so relational.
Right. Wait, don't we want to say hi to Sherry, who joined us?
Hi, Sherry. And I will get you that list. I see your note, and thank you for being here.
And thank you for sharing the post. That's what Beth told me, that you shared the post about the
yes,
thank you.
yeah.
You're welcome.
Thanks for supporting us. We love you.
Yes. So peacemaker, what's next? Lover,
Next
peacemaker.
is the artist. Again, and that's kind of normal. Venus rules both Taurus and Libra, and both of them rule creativity and aspects of the arts. Libra tends to rule more art, like art of all kinds, painting, theater, ceramics, flower arranging, interior design, anything that creates beauty and harmony. And so this is where okay, there's often this correlation between that fierce warrior side of Libra and that soft artistic side of Libra. And a lot of there was a saying in some of my early astrology classes, that with some of these generals, even like Winston Churchill, like if Churchill had gotten into art school or become an artist, like Europe would have been lost. And if Hitler had gotten into art school, there would have never been World War II. There would have, right? And so a lot of times your Libra pals need help finding their creative outlet. They're like Leos, that Libras and Leos really, really, really need to have permission to let their little light shine in whatever their creativity is. Now, for some people, it's something very simple and innocuous like cooking, but yet cooking is such an act of love, especially in a relationship or a family. And so don't demean or belittle any creative thing. If you've got a Libra who has some creative ability, but they don't see it, help them see it. And Bobby, for your friend and ex-husband, you may want to try and steer, and their ex-husband, you may want to try and steer them towards a creative outlet. They probably have never been allowed to look there, and that might give their upset a place to go. And their art is such a way of communicating things that can be more difficult to say. I even studied with a guy who said there's no difference between artistic creation and channeling. It's the same energy. It's coming out in a different source. And so for your Libra pals, make sure they've got an outlet. Where Libra is in your own chart, if you're not a Libra native, then give yourself permission to be a little more creative in that area. Does that make sense?
It does. And something you said in your notes about the artist, when the Libra artist is out of balance, that they'll try to beautify everything. They'll be driven as opposed to in a state of more choice and peacefulness. So they're driven to beautify everything. And you said a lot of times what ends up happening is they're trying to do everything and they never finish a lot of things. And what came up for me in looking at that was this idea of procrastination, where we tend to look at people who have a lot of unfinished projects and we say, oh, they're procrastinating, they aren't finishing it. But I think that's not necessarily true. A lot of procrastination isn't really that. It's, in this case, it could be just that overwhelm of being so driven, right? Like they have to, bring justice to the world. They have to beautify everything. There's such a powerful strength behind everything they're doing, is what I'm getting about the Libra. And so they can get overwhelmed. So they're really not procrastinating. They've just overwhelmed themselves. And the other thing I like to think about with procrastination is sometimes when things aren't complete in a healthy, balanced person, it's because you're really, really tuned in to the energy of something. and you know that something doesn't feel quite right. And so I used to judge myself so much and say, oh, I'm procrastinating. And then I realized, no, I'm just waiting, like what Esther Hicks would say. She said, don't motivate, don't use intention and motivation, wait for inspiration. And
Yeah.
so if you're inspired, then you're really tuned in to what your truth is. And so then you will know when the right moment is to complete a project, to take the next step, to decide something is right or wrong. And so
Yeah.
I just made me think of the Libra out of balance. And I wondered if that piece of procrastination would be appropriate.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. It also reminds me of that Buddhist concept of deep listening and the business concept of the sniper mind, where when you're really in the flow state, you're not juggling a million things. There's a deep stillness, you're listening, and you're waiting for instructions. You're waiting for the right moment to do only the next right thing.
Exactly.
And it's powerful.
Yeah. I remember in the 80s when I came out of school in the late 80s, every single seminar was all about intention, intention, intention. And the truth is, we got a ton of stuff done like that.
Right?
Right? But it was exhausting, and I woke up one morning and I went, oh my God, this 7 habits of highly effective people. These people are trying to get me to do more. I felt all of a sudden like it was all about doing and intending, and there was an exhaustion in it, and it was overriding the intuition and the inspiration. So
yeah. They didn't know then what we know now. Yeah. Right. God bless them. They were trying to help. Yeah.
Yes. All right, dear. What's the next archetype? We've got peacemaker, artist, and what's
and next is the peacemaker and the diplomat. And this is again where this is ninja level stuff. It's like you can only be the peacemaker and the diplomat when you have cleared enough of your own trigger points to where you can stand in the face of the screaming Wookiee or Jabba the Hutt or while people are firing at you, stormtroopers are firing at you with the blasters. It takes a lot of strength, and it's a huge thing. And this time of year is traditionally the times that things get set back to rights spiritually, materially, and emotionally. And one of the places Sobyl and I see this play out a lot has to do with the back to school season and people going back to work. And granted, that got kind of modified during COVID, but we're all trying to go back to some semblance that's closer than we've been in a while to a normal school and work life. And again, restoration of order, restoration of balance. And it's not flowing as easy for people as people would like. And so for you working families out there, raising children and grandchildren, know that even though there are days and times when it feels thankless and you feel undervalued and undercherished and underappreciated, we see you, we love you, we're here to help, and you are more loved and beloved than most of the people around you can express, feel safe to express, or realize they gotta express. And so part of the peacemaking process is the ask. Part of diplomacy is asking. And so if you have trouble asking for the recognition that you need, and the place I see it all the time is geez, he never says thank you. It's like Libra rules manners and politeness and graciousness. Of course it does. And so a lot of times this time of year, we have to go back to remedial grammar school, graciousness school, and teach people kind of manners 101. And again, you have to kind of desensitize your trigger points so you can stand there and make a joke of it, so nobody feels attacked and nobody feels, belittled, and so that your comedic timing is a thing. And
Right.
and just like Patton Oswalt has a new Netflix special out. If you have not seen it, it is very helpful. It is very helpful about being a family. And yeah,
Right.
yeah,
And a simple thing like recognizing that a partner or loved one doesn't say thank you, you know, it, it looks like it could be a simple observation, right? Like a simple observation, I notice you never say thank you. But
yeah,
if it's a trigger and it
right,
takes you back into your childhood, or even something older than that. I mean, more and
right,
more, Beth, you and I are looking at and addressing ancestral patterns, cultural patterns.
yeah,
If you're a woman and you carry, generation after generation, thousands of years of women being in certain roles where they're expected to do what they do. There's no
right.
question. This
And
is who
nobody,
you are.
yeah,
This is what you do. Thank you doesn't apply. So sometimes when you have this kind of pain, an actual painful
yeah.
experience of somebody not saying thank you to you, it could be as old as that. You could be carrying a really ancient pattern of feeling like you're doing without any gratitude because for thousands of years, that's what women have been experiencing, right?
And then as you were speaking, I just realized I had a situation with a client late last week where they were in the middle of this dynamic, this working husband and wife. And he had this amazing insight that, she lost her grace. She lost her graciousness. And I started to get really triggered about it because of the way I was raised with my own single mother. And then I realized that she'd had the worst week she'd had in a long time. And it wasn't personal. It wasn't about me. It was about that woman needed a hug, and she needed a hug from me. And she needed a big hug, and she needed to be told she was beautiful, and she needed to be told that she was seen. Like, I see how hard you're working, and I'm so sorry you're not getting the results that you want, but it's not lost. She needed a hug and a pep talk. And he went there, and I was like so proud of him because he figured it out. And then it shifted. And so again, that deep listening, that sniper mind, of like, what's really going on here? Because a lot of times the first place we go is I'm blowing it, or I have blown it, or I'm not lovable. There's so much of that. And especially with Libra, they need love.
Right.
They
And by
really,
the way, I don't know if this is a good time to get into it because we talked about it, but what you just said, I'm not lovable, that
yeah,
is a mistaken limiting belief. And we were going to talk, I mean,
let's do it.
let's
Yeah,
do it. Before
jump
we
right
do,
in. Yeah,
remember I said we were going to work with the light? I'm going to need to bring more, more light to the situation.
yeah,
We're experimenting with a ring light tonight, folks, because it's getting dark here in Atascadero.
yeah.
Let's see what we can do.
So much of our triggers boiled down to what we didn't get as children, and what we did get that was erroneous.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, how are we doing? Good enough with the
Good.
light?
Yeah,
All right.
much better.
So, I wanted to talk about mistaken beliefs because when you sent me the Libra notes, two of the things that came up under what do you call them? I'm sorry, I'm missing my little list here. The recap of the psychological, emotional, spiritual healing patterns. One of those patterns had to do with really having difficulty making decisions. And one of those patterns had to do with self-sabotage. So you said these are definitely tendencies with Libras who are out of balance. And I realized that in both of those categories, very often people are carrying in their energy field, in their nervous system, what we call a mistaken or limiting or negative belief. So if I say, I believe in the power of love, or I believe that people are basically good at heart, that's a positive belief. That's a belief that's uplifting, it opens, it expands. But when you say something like, I'm not lovable, or I'm not deserving, or people make promises but never keep them, that is a negative, limiting, contracting belief. And when it comes to making decisions, people who struggle with making decisions, which I've worked with so many times over the years, one of the things that comes up is people have a mistaken belief
Yeah.
it's an absolute right or an absolute wrong decision,
Yeah.
which isn't true. There
Yeah.
are decisions, and you make your decision, and then there's a consequence for that decision. And if the consequence is easy and nice and it seems like the red carpet rolls out, you go, oh, that's a good decision. But it's just a decision that had an easy consequence. And if you make a decision where, it seems like it's struggle and the door is closing and you say, oh, that was a bad decision. No, it was just a decision. And decisions should really be neutral in a way. So some people carry this idea, this mistaken belief that there's an absolute right and an absolute wrong. And that can come from childhood. That can come from being overly criticized and invalidated and made to believe and made to feel as a young child that your instincts, you can't trust your own instincts. Right?
Yeah.
That's a mistaken belief. The other piece that I think is directly connected to, especially for women, why women have such struggles with decision making, many do. I think that's ancestral. I think that's cultural. I mean, if we think about what women have lived for thousands of years, they were told who to marry, they were told to have children, they were told when to have sex. They didn't get to make decisions in their own lives. And here we are, right? And how many generations of women now have really been allowed to fully make decisions for their own lives? It's fairly recent in our history.
That's actually huge. And we've seen this both of us in our own healing lives, where some ancestor shows up and says, oh, honey, sorry, that's mine.
Right, exactly.
I'm gonna take that away right now. Right. That is not yours to carry. That is, yeah.
Right. The other way that I see the mistaken belief show up is what you call the self-sabotage pattern.
Yeah.
Where what did you say? Often, I like this. Often when your Libra pals get knee deep in a balance process, it's often easier to self-sabotage than stay focused on the task at hand. And I think, when people self-sabotage, usually what happens is they're going along in life, they've made choices, made decisions, they're moving ahead. And all of a sudden they get to a certain point, and inside the nervous system is this mistaken belief that says, nah, you're not good enough. And it trips them up, and boom, they crash right back to where they started. Yeah. And they don't know that they've just been tripped up by a mistaken belief that they're carrying. I wanted to give people just a little down and dirty summary of where mistaken beliefs come from. Number one, we carry them through our ancestral line. We sometimes, like if you come from, or a cultural line, like I have patients who are from Britain, and if you try to step out of the kind of family that you grew up in, you came from a steelworker family or a coal miner family, like who do you think you are to try to become a doctor or a chef? Right. So they carry that mistaken belief that you should stay where you are and not try to better yourself. So sometimes we inherit those beliefs through our cultural experience. And sometimes we just get them from the people who are in charge of us, our parents, our teachers, our spiritual leaders. They hand us these beliefs and we're too young to know and decide for ourselves. So we take it on as truth. But the most important one, and the one that you and I deal with probably the most, is the one that we take on ourselves after we've experienced something traumatic. So a classic example would be, you've got a child whose parents are always saying, oh, I'm going to come to your show. I'm going to be there for your play. I'm going to come to your game. And they never show up. And for this child, it keeps getting more and more traumatic over time. And they may come to the conclusion, oh, people make promises, but they never keep them. And that is now a mistaken belief. It's living inside your nervous system. And as you go through life, every time that somebody fails to live up to a promise, it strengthens it. And it gets so strong that you can't even see that hundreds of other times people did make promises and did keep them. You can't even take that in. So I would say that's such a huge part of the work I do with people, is finding where those mistaken beliefs reside and doing the emotional clearing to get them out of the nervous system. And I was so interested to see that for Libras, it shows up in 2 of the 5 categories that you were talking about as I think a major influence. So I learned a lot, Beth, from you.
Well, Virgo, Gemini, if we're not learning, we're bored. It's bad. Yeah. So the last of the archetypes is the advocate or the liberator. Frequently, it's the lawyer or the judge or the lawgiver, the one who helps people to freedom, especially people who have been wronged or falsely accused or did not get their share of the fruit of the harvest.
Yes.
And Librans are just born with a lawyer's instinct for, like, they've got radar for fair and unfair, and they've got an axe to grind, and they've got time, and so Librans, when they are in balance, really need an outlet for advocacy, whether it's phone banking at the election or volunteering as a foster parent or donating stuff to the women's shelter or something like that, or being on the board of a boy, the one that keeps coming up for me is that court-appointed special advocates,
Yes.
where children who are in the system are assigned a volunteer with some experience who can help navigate, but also be the eyes and ears for the court and for the parents, and be the bridge for a lot of people in those systems. Librans just have a fire in their heart. They really want to make the world a better place. But if they're not actualized and integrated, again, they don't finish what they start. They effort a lot. They spend a lot of money. They can, like Don Quixote, throw themselves at windmills a lot and get branded the village crazy lady. And so it's really important, and especially in communities, and especially now, most people don't actually, I want to back up. Okay. A local politician that I did some work with did an internship in South Africa right as apartheid was ending and changing. And he spent a lot of times in the neighborhoods, in the ghettos. And he talked about how the difference between there and here, when things fall apart in our neighborhood, we whine and we cry and we bitch about it on social media. And we fall into that victim place. There's nothing we can do. In South Africa, those communities were organized, and granted, they were along tribal lines, but they had their own sense of creating justice and bringing things back into balance. And what most people don't realize is that, and I just had an object lesson in this in my community, because on the Lower East Side here, we've got some issues, and most communities are governed by a city council and then a county board of supervisors, but each of those have a series of committees and commissions that govern different things. Like there's one here for neighborhoods. There's one here for parking issues. There's one here for ordinances. There's one here for builders to appeal their building code violations. Like there's 40 of them just on the city level. And so for your Libra pals who are out of balance and feeling really victimized by the day-to-day grind of their lives, encourage them to understand the governing networks of the community that they live in, and encourage them to find their place. It's not enough to just bitch about it on social media. Even if all you can do is see somebody else bitching and then post the email address of the pertinent city council member and then the phone number of the contact for the committee, but do it because it makes a difference. Contribute. Don't just whine. So an actualized Libran is going to need to be the leader, to be in leadership. But an unactualized Libra is going to feel like that small child that wasn't attended to. That it's where they break down is going to show you exactly what happened, what went wrong in their family of origin and with their attachment issues. And with Librans, the kidneys and the adrenals are always so prevalent. There's fear. There's always so much fear with Librans. Fear of want, of lack, of not being enough, of there not being enough, of a scant harvest, that there's not enough to nourish or sustain me emotionally or physically with food, or financially with resources.
This is probably the perfect spot to jump in and add that piece of how the body, the physical issues and the emotional issues are linked. You led right into
so
it.
Big. Yeah.
We and Beth and I are so familiar with this connection, but in 35 years of practice, I started noticing, because people were coming to me for, natural medicine and emotional clearing and everything. So I noticed that, the people who have the emotions that are connected to the kidney meridian, fear, dread, feeling paralyzed, bad memories, impending doom, all of these sort of the intense fear-based emotions, they had kidney and bladder issues. These were the people showing up with the chronic UTIs, the urinary tract infections, and kidney infections. I thought, oh, that's interesting. And
Yeah.
so the other main one that I looked at with Libra, you send me these lists and it's so fascinating. We could go on all day just about this connection, but you talked about Librans have a tendency towards diabetes and blood sugar issues. Well, that's a full-on spleen, pancreas, meridian pattern. And the emotions that are connected to it are so amazing because
Yeah.
you said, where did you say, somewhere in here, you talked about how the Libran who is out of balance can become oversensitive to the
Yeah.
emotions of people around them. And that is classic pancreas. So the very first emotion on the pancreas and spleen meridian is what we call oversensitive. And low
Yeah.
self-esteem, hopelessness, despair, feeling powerless, lack of control, feeling
Oh,
worried, nervous, distrust, stifled. I mean, it's just a rich um, connection of a collection of emotions. And I started noticing all my patients that are chronically dealing with low blood sugar or they're heading towards diabetes. I'm also always clearing them on being oversympathetic, low self-esteem, all of those. And
yeah.
what
Yeah.
you and I, what came, another sort of common theme out of all the notes that you sent me was that this being oversensitive to people around you is a boundary issue. Because
Right.
ideally, let's
Right.
say I have somebody tell me a story and it's a very moving story. I should be able to be with that person, hear the story, even be moved to tears, but not have it affect me in
Right.
a negative way, not have me take it into my energy field and create a negative problem.
Right.
And so where do
Right.
those boundaries get crossed? They get crossed in utero.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because a child is completely without boundaries in utero. And if the mother is going through a lot of difficult, powerful emotions, a child can be affected
Yeah.
by that. The other common one is what we call the vanished twin,
Yeah.
which is that a lot of pregnancies begin as twins, certain like 10 or 50% of them begin as twins, and then one of the twins actually dies. And the surviving twin has that experience of losing their
Yeah.
twin soul. And they are very often born having their boundaries. They haven't even had a chance to develop boundaries. And now those boundaries have been traumatized by the death of their twin soul. So they
Yeah.
come to the world oversensitive. And the other one is that if your boundaries are crossed in some way before the age of 7, especially before the age of 7, before you've been able to develop that
Yeah.
sense of self and that sense of boundary, so abuse or inappropriate touching or psychological abuse, before the age of 7, all of that can also create that boundaryless situation where you're now oversensitive to the emotions going around you. And for the Libran, who's very connected to the tribe to try to get things done and to try to be fair, to have to take all that in and try to manage it can be overwhelming to their nervous system.
Oh, yeah.
I found that part fascinating. So
That, and then that segues really nicely into some of the more complicated situations we've seen where it's an aspect of transference. There's a piece in psychology about transference where some part of you gets shut down so badly that you don't believe there's any help or hope for your situation getting any better. So you don't really try, but you get really agitated, like beyond agitated, on these bigger social issues like climate change that you can do absolutely nothing about on a global level, and but there's this huge overreaction. Now, of course, you can live a very disciplined life on your own in your community and make a difference, but you can't they get so caught up in the anger and rage and fear of the things they can't control that they really spin out up there, and then the inner life goes unattended. Now that one needs extra care, extra patience, extra comforting, validation, reassurance, redirection, real sophisticated, because they got real hurt. They got real hurt. And they have a lot to give. And so supporting them in their healing process while not shutting them down, you're just like redirecting them. Like, how about we volunteer at the recycling committee, or sit on the board at the transfer station management company people, like, yeah, there's a place for you. We just have to find it. Yeah.
I love it, Beth. I love it. Now, we're getting close. We've got 10 minutes left. So what other points would you like to make? What else would you like our people to know about
yeah, yay, thank you. That was so good. One of the things that Libra rules is forgiveness. What is the huge piece of the Jewish high holidays and the New Year, the days of awe? Forgiveness. It's looking back over your last year. And where was I a rock star and where was I not? And is there something I can do about the stuff where I wasn't the rock star? And so there's this whole piece. One of the things I think makes Libra so awesome is its devotion to fairness and justice and impartiality. And it wants to believe that the violated can be made whole again, even if I was the violator. It's like, even if I took that chick's parking spot, I'm sorry, man, I can fix it. I'm having a bad day. And I did that. I just did that. They just have a really innate sense of morality. And so when given the right support and the right tools, they can really be, again, in leadership. They can be a role model. And this is where I think Libra households, Sherry and Bobby, I think this is where you guys can be so special, and have been, in my experience of you, is that you run a household that's so different from the ones we were raised in. You're not doing the father knows best thing where dad can never make a mistake and never be confronted. It's like, hey, family is democracy. We are all humans here, and we're taking a stand for everybody getting their needs met. The tricky part is that we can't always all get our needs met at the same time. So there has to be some give and take. There has to be some negotiating, and that brings up feelings. And again, that gets back to boundaries. That gets back to fear. Am I confident enough to ask for what I need? Is my ego solid enough to where I don't have to dominate everything? Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I love it. And fear is such a predominant tone of what's going on worldwide.
Right.
I wish I could just wave my magic wand and make the fear and anxiety go away. I mean, that's why that's the first program on my emotional.
That you did.
The first program I created was the one on fear and anxiety, and because I feel that it is driving almost everything that's wrong with our culture right now is fear. You scratch the surface, find fear, and it's everywhere. It's in everything, and it's in our relationships. It's in how we're dealing with our health. It's everywhere, and so recognizing that and taking steps to free yourself from fear and anxiety is a very big and wonderful thing to do. Now, Beth, we've got 7 minutes left. Is there anything I want, first of all, to let people know how to reach you, and I'll let people know how to reach me and all that. But is there any kind of final capsule summary you want to give us for the Libra being?
Yeah. The one thing I just want to reiterate what you just said is that fear is, since man started living in communities and farming together and having to determine, do we have enough to get through the winter? Fear has been a driving force at this time of year. And so it's not uncommon for people to be feeling more fear as we move into the fall and the disciplines of the normal year. For people in the federal government, their fiscal year starts on October 1st. Tell me that ain't fair. We just barely missed a government shutdown. There's fear in the fall. As we move towards the winter. And so if you have a lot of Libra, or if you have a lot of old traumas that happen this time of year, you're going to be feeling it more. And so give yourself permission to be extra, extra, extra gentle and validating with your own self.
Right.
Be your own advocate, be your own best friend. And then we were in a mental, the reason we started this a year ago was that we were seeing the pre-existing mental health crisis in this country just explode. And we were trying to create something that would have value to our clients. And since then, it seems like corporate America and whatnot is catching on. And I'm seeing a lot more articles in journals and on social media, from everything from the Atlantic to Psychology Today, to the Sacramento Bee, just about mental health statistics, causes, resources. And one of the things that really reached out to me was that suicide is the third leading cause of death in teenagers in America right now. And Libra rules the developmental age of 12 to 14, where some of that stuff can really start to become more pronounced. And so for any of you that have a young one in your life, pay more attention, listen with not just with your ears, but with your eyes and with your heart and with your intuition. Ask questions, make time, and familiarize. Boy, okay. So I keep starting to say things, and my grandmothers are like, no, say this instead. Don't assume, ask a lot of questions. And it's common in roles of parenting and extended family, aunties, uncles, to be scared to intervene. And so if you are struggling with where your place is, what your roles and your responsibilities are, call me, call Sobyl, and let's help you sort it out, because it's undoubtedly a piece of the karma between you all, and let's not carry it forward. Let's fix it now so that this lifetime, can be more awesome.
Right. And some of that, when we're talking about fear in the fall, going into fall and winter, I thought how much of that is ancestral, people going through winter and questioning whether they would survive. So some of that survival fear
is really huge,
really ancient. So,
and then there's bullying in school. The bullying in school is like such a huge thing now. And like, it's always been a thing, but we didn't have it the way kids now have it.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Now, honey, we're very close to the end. So I want to make sure that people, thank you so much as always. I always learn so much. It actually helps me, validate what I know and put it into a whole other context. It's so valuable. I just love doing
this. I'm so grateful.
Anyway, Beth, beautifully done. And please tell everybody how they can reach you, what you're up to.
Yeah. Good reminder. I spaced out. I am in California now for the next 26 days. And then I'm going to my beloved Kauai, where I will be for an indefinite period of time. So next episode, I'm going to be you'll be hearing chickens in the background. It's going to be awesome. Right. But you can always contact me through my website, my social media pages. I'm on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn.
Name the website.
Oh, right. My website is bethmcdonaldconsulting.com.
Right.
Right. And blessings and thank you to you, Sobyl, because we had talked to you. This has been your brainchild since 2015. You at least 2015, maybe 2014. And a year ago, you called me and said, I've got it figured it out. We're doing it on Thursday. Can you join in? It was like, talk about listening in the sniper mind. It was like, there was fear and frustration because it wasn't happening. And then when it happened, it was like, righteous.
It's happening. Yeah. So thank you so much, Beth. I know everybody out there appreciates what you had to share. And as always, I love the collaboration. So I am Dr. Sobyl Bunis. You can find me at the Emotional Clearinghouse, all one word. That's my website. I'm also on YouTube, the Emotional Clearinghouse. I think it's just not the word just emotional clearinghouse. That's where these podcasts live. And I'm also available for private sessions. My phone number is 805-892-2400. And there's going to be more to come. We haven't put on the calendar our next podcast, but we will. So stay tuned.
Yeah.
It's on Facebook.
New moon.
On
Yeah.
Instagram. Yes, we'll try to get as close to the new moon as possible. So once
Yes.
again, everybody, thank you for being here. Thank you for participating, for your questions. And Beth, again, I look forward to our next conversation and, in our series called Astrology as a Healing Guide. All right, everybody, have a beautiful evening.
Thanks for being here.
Next time. Take care.